Hey, what's up, Good Life? And thanks for joining me for today's 128 moment. If you joined us last Sunday, we talked about how to navigate our relationships with our extended family. And every family tree, no matter who you are, has a few shaky branches. But when we look through the generations of our family trees, we can sometimes wonder if a positive future can ever come from such a problematic past. If you've ever felt that way about your family, or maybe just portions of your family, then I think one of the most boring sections of Scripture just might contain the hope that you need. In the New Testament, it opens up with the genealogy. You know, those long lists of names of generation after generations of names that can sometimes be really difficult to pronounce. Well, if I was tasked with writing the story of Jesus Christ, I would not start with the most boring part, but that's exactly what Matthew did. The very first verses of the entire New Testament contain a genealogy, a family tree. And to the modern reader, this is about as exciting as, watching the slideshow of your Aunt Edna's vacation to Wiki Wachi. But Matthew's ancient readers, to them, man, those verses were convincing and captivating introduction. For a first century Jew, your family tree, your family lineage, it was your identity. And documenting your connection to your forefather Abraham was everything. And without it, you viewed yourself in that society as nothing. You became a Gentile, which meant to their culture that they were less than nothing. You see, the book of Matthew was written to Jews by a Jew, and its goal was to prove that Jesus was the King of the Jews, the fulfillment of God's covenant promises to their father Abraham and to King David. And in many ways, Matthew introduced his book with his conclusion. He said Jesus was a Jew through Abraham and a king through David. And Matthew accomplished this task by walking through the family tree of Jesus, tracing the generations from father to son to father to son to father to son. But before he got to Mary and Joseph and Jesus, he included the names of 4 women who are unique in their unlikeliness. They're not only unlikely because they're women in a father to son genealogy, and yes, I know how dated that notion is, but they're even more unlikely because each of them had a notorious past that made their inclusion in the genealogy of Jesus both improbable but also inspiring. There's Tamar, and she is a story that's more fitting for Jerry Springer than the Holy Bible. Tamar's messed up tale, it involves a dead husband, a prostitute's uniform, a baby through her father-in-law. You can find it in Genesis 38. But in spite of all that dysfunction and deception, her unlikely child is in the lineage of Jesus. Then there's Rahab. If you are auditioning for a role in God's story, people like Rahab need not apply. At least that's what we think. She was a Gentile, a Canaanite, a prostitute. Kings don't come from people like her, but Jesus did. Then there's Ruth. Ruth was a foreigner, a Gentile, and a Moabite. Her ancestors were the product of incest between Lot and his oldest daughter after the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. But Ruth's people were also pagans who offered human sacrifices to their many gods. Nevertheless, by our God's providence, she became a part of his perfect plan. And then there's Bathsheba. Matthew's inclusion of the wife of Uriah, as how he says it, was a reminder of the worst mistake of the Jews' favorite hero. King David had slept with the wife of one of his greatest warriors, and when Bathsheba became pregnant, David had Uriah killed to cover his crime, and still, the child from their eventual marriage is the ancestor of the King of Kings. These 4 improbable entries in the family tree of Jesus, they give hope to all of us. If a notorious past didn't disqualify these people from playing key roles in God's redemptive plan, man, then there's nothing in your past or mine that can keep us from the future that God intends. And there's no one in your family tree that's beyond the reach of God's grace. I encourage you today, think through all those shaky branches of your family tree. And as you think through those branches, as you see those faces, I want to ask you, who do you see who needs to see Jesus in you? I hope this series is encouraging you. I hope it's also challenging you. I hope it calls all of us to live a life of purpose, a life that gives God the glory he deserves and leads us to the enjoyment that we desire. Hope you'll be able to join us Sunday, 9:30 and 11 as we continue our Relate series, looking at what it looks like to relate to our church family, to the family of God. Will be 9:30 and 11 at the church, 11 o'clock online. And until then, let's go be a people who will love enough.